Hello, everyone. If you recall Doug Baldwin, he is an ex-Seahawk NFL player, former player, and he actually is going to determine the fate of six lives. Now, on Thursday and Friday, Doug Baldwin Jr. will help decide the fate of six lives. He's a retired Seattle Seahawk star, and four colleagues on an obscure state board will consider whether five people convicted of murder and another serving 39 years for a drive-by shooting and armed robbery should be freed from prison. Now, you know that they're doing the compassionate release of some prisoners or inmates. They are getting out because they've served enough time. They're of age, older. They may have health issues. They are no longer a threat to society. They are really not able to go do anything but maybe just live out the rest of their life, or maybe even get, um, you know, uh, something they can mildly do that's not going to put the public or anybody at risk. So these are people that allegedly have been convicted because they have really committed the crimes. Because there are people, behind bars that are innocent, that have not committed any crimes, that are still serving behind bars. But however, there are five people that were convicted of murder, and then there's one that I said, serving 39 years for a drive-by shooting and armed robbery. Now, without the help of Baldwin and the rest of the state clemency and pardons board, most will die in prison. And that's kind of a hard, thought, to see people die in prison, especially your loved ones. And even if they've committed, certain acts of violence or crimes, it's still hard that they will die in prison, or it's a possibility they will die in prison. Not saying that what they did was right, not condoning what they've done, but the fact that they merely will die in prison and they've never got a chance to get out of prison, to show that they've been rehabilitated, to show that they've changed their life around. Some of them have lived model citizens behind bars and have made some significant impacts to other inmates, but they are stuck in prison. And so this board that Doug Baldwin sits on, he is going to help decide if they should get out of prison. And so the board will hear their cases and their pleas. Now, they will hear from those seeking mercy, because they are seeking mercy. God allows mercy, and God is a merciful God. So I'm going to say that because that's true. If you are a believer, then you know that in the word of God. And there's many people that have asked God for mercy that have not committed any crimes, that have not served time behind bars, but they have asked for mercy upon their life for other reasons. Now, the board is also going to hear from friends and families from personal references. They'll hear from those opposed to any change in the sentence, and from victims, victim families, and prosecutors. Now, I want to say this because I know this is difficult, but I'm going to say this because sometimes my videos are controversial. And we shouldn't be afraid of controversial things when it's put in perspective, because we can learn some things from controversial situations and experiences. And hopefully they do not lead to violence or the threat of violence or verbal assaults. But it's good that we can have smart, intelligent conversations about controversial topics. Now, some people believe, and I'm going to say this because I've talked to many different people about the death penalty. And I've talked to people about people being behind bars for decades and decades and decades and decades, and it goes on and on and on. Do you think that letting these inmates out to live out the rest of their life, they may be elderly, up in their 80s, 90s, I'm not sure about 90s, but I'm throwing that out there. They may be in their 70s and or late 60s, and they have health problems. And because the victims have suffered a loss as well, so we don't take anything away from the victims, they've suffered probably tremendously, for the loss of their loved ones and the brutality of it and the violence. And so, do you think that that's going to bring back their family members if they let these the ones that's being considered out, or anyone for that matter, even though it's 6 people they're considering, but even across the board of different states and the prisons, do you believe that it will bring back anyone's loved one if they let them out? And do you believe in forgiveness? Do you believe that God forgives, and we have to forgive and repent back, repentance? Do you believe that people deserve a second chance? Do you believe there should be mercy on the ones that have committed the crimes? And I know there's a lot of different questions there, but do you believe those things? And I would like to hear your honest opinion, respectful comments about this, because we got to look at both sides. It's painful, but if they've served their time, and let's just say they served their time as a model citizen, they have repented, they are very remorseful for what they've done, they've learned from their mistakes, because the person serving 39 years obviously probably was very young when they went into prison. It doesn't say right now what their age is, but however, they're going to make a recommendation to Governor Jay Inslee on who should go free and who should remain in prison. Now, the recommendations carry great weight. It carries great weight. In over hundreds of cases since 2012, Inslee has followed the board's advice more than 95% of the time. Now, he says, I want to get it right. I want to do right by not only the folks who are petitioning, but also by the families and the community that's been impacted by whatever cases we're seeing, Baldwin said. Now, this is Doug Baldwin stating this, the ex-NFL star, Seattle Seahawks player. And he said it's a great responsibility, and in some cases, a great burden to make the right decision. And so I'm going to stop right there for a moment, because I can see this being a burden upon your heart, upon your conscience, upon your thought, your mental state, your soul, because if you make the wrong decision and say, yes, they served enough time, they've been a model citizen, they get out, and then they commit another crime, that's a burden that you're going to carry for a long time. And it's difficult, even when God says to turn our burdens over to him, that will be a difficult, situation to carry on a burden if the decision you make to decide they should get out and they turn around and do something wrong. So he's saying it's a great responsibility, in some cases, a great burden to make the right decision. And that's true, because you want to get it right, and you want to have compassion and empathy, for the families that have lost loved ones. But on the other hand, you want to look and put it in perspective too, and say, how have they been behind bars? What have they done? Have they made some significant changes? Have they made impacts on other inmates? Have they been positive? Have they turned it around? What are they remorseful? Are they genuine remorseful? They're not pretending just to get out, but they are genuinely remorseful. So those are a lot of things to look at. But it says the board includes a civil rights attorney to see if any civil rights are going to be violated, or have their rights, everyone has followed the law when it comes to their civil rights and judicial, rights and things like that. But the former director of the State Department of Licensing, a former court reporter and bailiff, and the dean of students at Whitman College. So this is what the board includes, and it also includes Baldwin, who is 34 years of age currently. He's a Super Bowl winner and 2-time Pro Bowler who in an 8-year career became one of the greatest wide receivers in Seahawks history. So he was appointed by Inslee in October, and he is the youngest member by more than 2 decades. He's the newest member on the State Clemency and Importance Board, right? And so Inslee's office contacted Baldwin, who's long been active in police and criminal legal reform efforts. So that's a good thing that he's been doing the work. His background shows, he has a background. He's been doing the work. You can see that he's been doing that, which is good that he's been doing the work, because, when we vote for people in, we have to vet them, right? And see what type of work they've been doing. See what their track record is. Have they been a model citizen? Have they been able to turn things around? we look at those things. And so he's been long active in that, and last summer to see if he or anyone he knew was interested in serving on the volunteer board, which is good because the Inslee office reached out to him. Are you interested, or do you know anyone else that's interested? And so one or more than 230 boards and commissions appointed by the governor. And so Baldwin filled out an application himself. And he says, I've been in these places for a while now, and he pauses, frustrated with the systems that I just feel like need some shaking up. He feels the systems need some shaking up. I feel they need some shaking up, but I also feel that there needs to be an overhaul, of our judicial system as well. Now, he's looking to find solutions because in 2019, injuries ended Baldwin's pro football career. And he says he hasn't watched a football NFL game since and likely never will. And it sounds like there's been some traumatic situations going on with Mr. Doug Baldwin to why he has not been able to engage into watching some NFL games since his career ended due to injuries. Now, he says when he turns on a game or is at a stadium, his body reacts. The roar of the crowd, the smell of the grass, they're triggers. They cause aggression, fight, or flight. So he's dealing with that. He's dealing with those things. And it says, I'm sweating and my heart's palpitating and all those things because I'm conditioned to be in that environment and go perform. Now, if you're used to performing, like you're into sports and you've played sports all your life, that's all you really know, and you have to acclimate and, learn some other things that are passionate of yours that you are good at to get involved in, know who you are, because you got to reflect on who you are and be real with yourself about what you can do and what you can no longer do, or what you're not good at and what you're good at. And it could be, you feel some type of, trauma when you're not able to do those things. So I get it. I get it. And when I hurt my foot, I could not run, and it was hard for me not to run, but I had to, keep pushing through. And so I became I was always a power walker, but I started being able to utilize that part of it. And now I'm back to, doing some runs, but not every week, and and so anyway, I feel I can kind of relate to what he's saying. And then having brothers, family members that participate in sport and had to take a break to get themselves back together because of an injury or something like that. So we understand that. So I can relate, to that. And you get out there and you just want to do it. And it's hard for you, but you do it. You find other things that you're good at. And when you're able to get back at it, you do it. Now, in his case, he probably will never go back to, playing pro. But he goes on, like he said, and things that come with that don't necessarily bode well for me and my mental health once I go home. He says he'll read the box scores. He'll talk to Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. He won't watch the games. He says he's grappled with depression for months after retiring. He says he's doing much better now and sees several therapists regularly. And I am glad to hear that Doug Baldwin is able to come out and tell his story, share his story, tell his story, and the work that he's doing and his conscience about it. Having a conscience about it, having compassion, consideration for both sides of the fence on this situation, because this is not easy to be in this situation. And I can see, some people do grapple with depression after they retire. And if they are forced in retirement where they really did want to retire at an earlier age, but they did, I can see that too, where he grappled with depression after retiring. And I know some good friends or elderly people, family members too as well, that it was hard when they retired. After so many years that you've been on a job, they went out and got another job. And that helped them. And when they got it out of the system, as you want to say, what lack of a better word, they were able to acclimate into their retired years. And so that's actually good. And I see where there's going to be young people, still young in their late 50s or, that not even 60 yet, that can retire and they may have to do other things, so they're not sitting there, twiddling their thumbs or dealing with depression because they retired when there's still a lot of life in you. Because there's a lot of people that retire and have a lot of life left. But sometimes unfortunate incidents lead people to early retirement, and so therefore they might grapple with depression. So this is not something to, to laugh about or take lightly. It's something to take in consideration because we're all human, and most of us have experienced either in our life or someone else's life that that's close to you, maybe your husband, our wife, a loved one, someone, a family member, or just a good friend or something. So he says he's doing much better now and sees his therapist regularly. And there's nothing wrong with seeing therapists. I was reading an article where the people were calling people weak because they needed to see a therapist and they were suffering from, mental health issues. And I think that some people are just mean, downright evil, and they lack awareness, and they're just uneducated people with hate in their heart. And that's what I determined from some of these people that come out to say those things like that. And that's why, it's important that we don't have a stigma placed on mental health. And we need to continue to talk about removing the stigmas of mental health, because mental health, when you have issues, it is real. And we see a lot of mental health issues right in this society, in today's society, not just young, older people now, but young people as well, and even children. And so it is real. And so it's important that we don't place a stigma on mental health. Okay, so we can get some takeaways from this story because it's so important. And even the people behind bars, we don't know what type of issues that they had that caused them and led them, to do the things they've done. And I'm not making excuses for them, but we know that some is just plain evil, downright evil and wicked. And we know some people have situations and they've never had positive role models or anyone to mentor them and to direct them, redirect that negative energy into something positive. And if they don't have good role models as parents, guess what's going to happen? Most of the time, they're going to wind up in a situation where someone like Mr. Doug Baldwin is going to be sitting on a board determining somebody's fate, okay? So he goes on to say, I was really struggling with leaving the sport. I mean, obviously, I had been playing football since I was 6 years old. So that's all I had known, Baldwin said. And that's what I was saying. That's what some people know all their life in sports. And then when something happens to you and your career is taken away, or your prospects, if you were in high school and you started as a young child, 4 or 5 years of age, and he says he started at 6, and that's all you're good at it, you have scouts, and he went as far as the pro, and then to have an injury like that, you can go through depression. And good thing that it doesn't sound like he got in some trouble, but you can go down a wrong path sometime because you feel your life is over, and this might be something easy to do, but it's not good for you. And if you don't have people redirecting you and saying, look, everything's going to be all right, you can get back and you can do something positive, find something you love doing, and start to make an impact with that. And so it's very important because this video can even be used to help other young people in a sense. And so I hope that you will consider sharing this video and giving it a thumbs up. But anyway, he goes on to say, Mr. Baldwin says, and if you look at the grand scheme of things, typically people don't retire at 30 years old, right? That's true. That's very, very young. So now I had to go to, and figure out what I am going to do with the rest of my life. Baldwin and his wife, Tara, have 3 daughters, all under the age of 4. So he has young children. And from a spacious, unmarked office suite above a Renton coffee shop that he's an investor in, Baldwin has launched a little business and charitable empire. He runs an impact investment fund with stakes in about a dozen organizations aiming to disrupt historically exclusive systems. And you know what that means, historically exclusive systems. And I don't want to get into that, but you guys can kind of think about what he's saying there. Historically exclusive systems. Now, he's also the CEO of one of those business, Ventric, V-E-N-T-R-K, or it could be Ventrk, but Ventric, a health and wellness software company, and his Family First Community Center, a $15 million project with the city of Renton, years in the making, is under construction and scheduled to open next to Cascade Elementary School next year. Now, former Renton Mayor Dennis Law, who partnered with Baldwin in spearheading the community center, calls the project one of the highlights of his career and says Baldwin is one of the greatest guys I've ever had the opportunity to work with. He is very compassionate, and he knows that people can go sideways and make the wrong moves and end up where maybe they should not be. Law said, and that's what I was saying. Making, some decisions, making some wrong moves, and that's something that's very profound, and we understand that. And he goes on to say, and I think he would be very methodical in the process in thinking through who deserves another chance. Now, Baldwin's police reform efforts far predate his retirement. He helped lead the Seahawks in linking arms during the national anthem shortly after Colin Kaepernick first knelt to protest racial injustice and police brutality. After police shootings of black men and 12-year-old Tamir Rice, he demanded that attorney general in all 50 states review police training policies that led to death threats and to a meeting with the Seattle Police Department. He wrote to then President Donald Trump calling for him to pardon elderly, nonviolent drug offenders who have already served long sentences. He was a prominent public supporter, testifying before the Washington legislature of Initiative 940, which voters approved in 2018, requiring de-escalation training for police officers and making it easier to prosecute officers who use deadly force. But he's frequently sought to find middle ground. His father was a police officer for more than 35 years. Baldwin led the Seahawks in linking arms, not in kneeling, just a week after a teammate had sat during the anthem. When he made his demand of attorneys general, he talked about how the killing of Tamir was not an isolated incident, while also saying only a very minute number of officers were violating policies. He does not believe in defunding the police. He's big on finding solutions that aren't just all one track. Anthony Powers, the reentry program director for the Seattle Clemency Project, which Baldwin has worked with in recent years. People want police reform, but then it's like they're going against police. He's more like, let's work with police and the community to find something that works. If he sounds, at times like a politician, well, he's thought about it, but worries he would be frustrated with the slow pace of change in politics. I genuinely think I'm too young, he said, of public office. If that opportunity was to come and I was to pursue it, it wouldn't be for many years. But he also believes there are some third, fourth, and fifth chances. Baldwin doesn't necessarily view his fourth-year term on the Clemency and Pardons Board as a continuation of his criminal legal reform. This is also an opportunity for me to learn more and get really into the weeds of how these systems actually operate, he said. His path to the board began with a 2021 letter he wrote to the governor's office on behalf of a Seattle Clemency Project client who long since completed his sentence but was seeking a pardon because his manslaughter conviction put him at risk for deportation. It wasn't something I was too involved in, just supporting someone who had rehabilitated and made great strides to be a better person, Baldwin said. It honestly was as simple as that. A year or so later, with openings on the board, Inslee's office reached out to Baldwin to see if he or anyone he knew was interested in serving. Baldwin was interviewed by the governor's staff and legal counsel, as were several other candidates. He is replacing a former police chief. He is well aware of the weight of the board's decision, something he called a heavy burden. You're making a decision based on, is this person willing to acclimate back into society and be a productive member of society, he said. I firmly believe in second chances. I firmly believe in third, fourth, fifth chances. We're all human. We all make mistakes. We all do things we're not proud of. But it's how do you recover from those situations? And that's true. How do you recover from them? And there's the human part of this as well, because the board is generally the last chance for redemption. It ordinarily only hears cases in which all appeals have been exhausted and only cases in which at least 10 years have passed since conviction. There is no set definition of what they're looking for. State laws only that pardons and commutations can be given in extraordinary cases. Each individual board member determines what they think is extraordinary since it's not defined in the statute, said Cheryl Angeletti Harris, an attorney advisor with the U.S. Department of Justice and the chair of the board. She's looking at the seriousness of the crime. She's looking at remorse. And that's what I was saying. Are they looking at, they look at being remorseful. But then she said they're looking at the seriousness, the nature of the crime. Now, in informal inductory board meetings this fall, Angeletti Harris remembers telling Baldwin and the other newest member about what awaits them. They are going to be mentally and emotionally drained by the end of the 2 days of hearings, she said. You have someone's life in your hands. You're either going to say no and someone has to stay in prison, or you say yes. Saying yes, even the rehearing the cases, has its own repercussions for victims and their families. It's like they have this scab, she said, and you're ripping it off every time they have to go through something like this. It's like a scab because the wound, it hasn't healed 100%. It's trying to heal. It's got a scab over it, but it's tender, sore, and if you peel the scab off, it might start to bleed again. And then there's the wounds of a scab that you can peel, it starts to flake, excuse me, and you see the discoloration. So that, I understand what she's saying. Now this week they're hearing the petition of Henry Grisby. Oh, it is in here. He's 82 years of age, who has spent more than half his life in prison. He was sentenced to life without parole in 1978 after he accompanied another man to an apartment, and that man shot and killed 5 people inside. His application for a commutation features dozens of references and runs more than 300 pages. He and his wife for more than 4 decades, Juanita, have 9 children, 24 grandchildren, and 12 great-grandchildren. I need and want my husband home with me and my family, Juanita Grisby wrote to the board. They will hear the case of Anthony Godfrey, 55. Now, he's still fairly young, convicted of first-degree murder 23 years ago after he shot Carlos Villamor in a fight and was sentenced to 39 years. His application for commutation includes 28 letters of support and runs more than 140 pages. I have searched in every part of my being on how to show my deepest regrets and apology for what I have done to you, your family, and humanity, Godfrey wrote to Villamor's family. A letter included in his petition. I just hope that you find me worth an atom of mercy, and allow me to be in your debt forever, please. They'll hear the case of Minvelus Makas, 77, convicted in 1989 of setting a fire that killed her husband and 2 sons. She was sentenced to life without parole. She has always maintained her innocence. Her application for commutation is more than 180 pages. Her granddaughter, among many others, wrote to the board. She described how Makas sends Christmas and birthday presents every year from prison. Each package is filled with handmade stockings and treats, and for each time I was pregnant with my children, she would send her handmade baskets, Makas' granddaughter wrote. She is a positive influence, not only to us, but to her fellow inmates. I am very proud of my grandma. Now, Baldwin says he's been reading case files. There is so much to take in. There are statements from supporters, from victims, families, from defense attorneys, from prosecutors. They are infraction and behavioral reports from prison, performance reviews, health records. There are the details of the original crime, and there is all that's happened since. The path traveled towards redemption. The path traveled towards redemption. Toward redemption. He says, I'm trying to get as close as I can to who this human being is. He said, how do you get to the human part of it to then determine is this human being on a path to reclamation? Reclamation. That's right. You got to get to the human part. You got to get down in it to the human part. You got to peel off these layers. And that is so important, to peel back the layers and to find out why, to find out where, why, how, come. Why did they do this? Where did they come from? What are the layers that they were covering that was on them that caused them to commit these heinous crimes? And then, to get down to that human part of who they really are. So that's so important. So I hope that you will stay tuned and you will finish out this whole video, even if you have to come back to it, because there's a lot of takeaways in this video. There's a lot that we can learn, that we can share with other people about this. And so we salute to you, or I do, uh, Doug Baldwin, for doing the work, for doing the work, being positive, being a beacon of hope and light in your community, and being able to weigh both sides of it, look at both perspectives, and knowing that this is not an easy fate for you. So my prayers to you and your family, for what you've been through already, what you're gonna go through, and all the work that you have really been doing. Salute to you, brother, and stay strong. Stay strong. Don't give up, and just continue to let your light shine so forth before men and other people. God bless on that. And don't forget, you all, to like the video, give it a thumbs up, share the video, and subscribe to the channel. And please, please, please leave your honest, respectful comments below. I would love to hear your feedback on what you think about this. Okay? God bless you all.